Today we will learn about concurrent forces in a plane. In this video, we will cover the following topics. First one is what are concurrent forces? Then a resultant of force. What do you mean by resultant of force? Here we will also see the different methods used for finding out the resultant of forces. Then we will learn about the composition of forces, then a resolution of forces, and finally we will see what do you mean by equilibrium of a particle. Now we will discuss one by one. First one is concurrent forces. Before defining the concurrent forces, let me introduce the term line of action of a force. Now what do you mean by line of action of a force? It's an infinite line along which the force acts. Okay, so if there are infinite number of forces acting on a plane, we can draw line of action for each of these forces. Now, if the line of action of all the forces pass through a single point, then we will call that system as concurrent force system. So, concurrent forces means the line of action of all the forces pass through a single point. Now, here you can see three forces acting on a plane. They are F1, F2 and F3. Now here I am going to draw the line of action of force F1. So this denotes the line of action of force F1. Similarly, we can draw the line of action of F2 and F3. So in this figure, you can see that the line of action of these three forces meet at a point O. So this system of forces is known as the concurrent force system. Now my next question is it possible for replacing all these forces by a single force so that the effect produced by these three forces on the object will not be changed? Yes, it is possible. So if we can replace all the forces by a single force in such a way that the effect produced by all the forces on the object is same as the effect produced by that single force, then we can call that single equivalent force as the resultant of these three forces. And there are different methods for finding out the resultant of forces. They are: first one, parallelogram law of forces; second one, triangle law of forces; and the third one is polygon law of forces. So in this video, we will give importance for the first two methods, that is parallelogram law of forces and triangle law of forces. Now here in this figure, you can see that 6 people are pulling a block, right? Or we can say that this block is subjected to 6 different forces. So in the second figure, you can see that an elephant is pulling that block. Instead of this 6 people, I have used the service of an elephant, right? Or in other words, we can say that I have replaced all the 6 forces by a single force for moving this block. This single force is known as the resultant force. Now let's see what is meant by composition of forces. As I have told earlier, it is possible to replace a number of forces by a single force without affecting the effect of forces on the object. So that process of replacing a number of forces by a single force in such a way that the effect produced by all the forces is same as the effect produced by the single force, that process is known as the composition of forces, or it is also known as compounding of forces. So what do you mean by composition of forces? It is the process of finding out the resultant force of a number of given forces. That is known as the composition or compounding of forces. Now let's move on to the next topic, that is parallelogram law of forces. This is one of the methods for finding out the resultant of two concurrent forces. So let's see what is parallelogram law of force. So when two forces F1 and F2 acting in a particle are represented by two adjacent sides of a parallelogram, then the diagonal connecting these two sides represents the resultant force R in magnitude and direction. That is the definition for parallelogram law of forces. Okay, so here you can see that two forces F1 and F2 are acting at point O. I want to replace these two forces by a single force which is known as the resultant of F1 and F2. So how can we find out the resultant using parallelogram law of force? So for that, I need to represent these two forces by two adjacent sides of a parallelogram in magnitude and direction. So what I am going to do is I am going to draw a parallelogram. Okay, so this shows the parallelogram. So here I am going to consider F1 and F2 as two adjacent sides like this. So these two sides represents forces F1 and F2 in magnitude and direction. Okay, so if we can represent like this, the diagonal connecting these two sides, that means this diagonal represents the resultant of F1 and F2 in magnitude and direction. Clear? That is parallelogram law of forces. Now we need to find the formula for finding out the resultant force. So for that, I have drawn the parallelogram here. I have marked forces F1, F2 and the resultant forces. Now I have named the parallelogram as OACB. Now for finding out the magnitude of the resultant force, I have completed a new triangle ACD like this. So line of action of force F1 is extended and then I have dropped a perpendicular from C. Right. So this ACD denotes the right angled triangle. Now let us assume that the angle between F1 and F2 is theta. So this angle is theta. So what will be this angle? Angle CAD, that also will be theta. Now this angle, that is the angle made by the resultant force with F1, that is taken as alpha. Okay. Now in order to derive the formula, I am going to consider two triangles. One is OCD and the second triangle will be ACD. So with the help of these two triangles, I will derive the formula for finding out the resultant force as well as the formula for finding out the direction of the resultant force. So let us take the first triangle OCD. Now from this triangle, I need to find out OC. So this is a right angle triangle, right? OCD is a right angle triangle. So using Pythagoras theorem, we can say OC square is equal to OD square plus CD square. Now OD is OD. OD can be written as OA plus AD. So our equation becomes OA plus AD the whole square plus CD square. Now how will we expand this one? OA plus AD the whole square. That can be written like this, right? OA square plus 2OA AD plus AD square plus CD square. So let it be equation number 1. Now I am going to use the second triangle, that is CAD. So from that triangle, what is sine theta? Sine theta will be opposite side by hypotenuse. So sine theta will be CD by AC. Similarly, what will be cos theta? Adjacent side by hypotenuse, that is AD by AC. Also, from this right angle triangle, what is AC square? AC square is equal to AD square plus CD square. Now, all these formulas can be substituted in our equation number 1. So, our equation becomes OC square is equal to OA square plus 2 into OA into, instead of AD, we can write AC cos theta, right? So from cos theta is equal to AD by AC, you can find out what is AD. AD will be AC into cos theta. So instead of AD, I am writing here as AC cos theta. Now what is AD square plus CD square? That also can be obtained from this triangle, right? AD square plus CD square is AC square. So I am writing that here. Okay, so our equation becomes OC square is equal to OA square plus 2OA into AC cos theta plus AC square. Now what is OA? OA is F1, right? OA is F1. What is AC? AC is this side, right? We know that for a parallelogram, AC will be exactly equal to OB. Now what is OB? OB is F2. So definitely AC also will be F2. So equation, and what is OC? OC is R. So our equation becomes R square is equal to, instead of OA we can write F1, and instead of AC we can write F2. So F1 square plus 2 F1 F2 cos theta plus F2 square, or the magnitude of the resultant force can be calculated using the formula square root of F1 square plus 2 F1 F2 cos theta plus F2 square, where theta is the angle between F1 and F2. So this is the formula for finding out the magnitude of the resultant force. Now how will you find out the direction of the resultant force? So for that also we will consider the same figure, and we will consider the triangle OCD. We need to find out the value of alpha. Okay, so from that triangle, what is tan alpha? Tan alpha is equal to opposite side by adjacent side, right? That is CD by OD. Now what is OD? OD can be written as OA plus AD. Okay, so tan alpha will be equal to CD divided by OA plus AD, which is again equal to, now from this triangle ACD, what is sin theta? Sin theta is CD by AC, right? So from here, what is CD? CD is equal to AC sin theta. So instead of CD, we can write AC sin theta divided by OA plus, instead of AD, we can write AC cos theta. So our equation becomes tan alpha is equal to, what is AC? AC is F2, right? So F2 sin theta divided by OA is F1. So F1 plus F2 cos theta. Now from here, you can find out the direction of the resultant force alpha, which will be equal to tan inverse of F2 sin theta divided by F1 plus F2 cos theta. So now we have obtained two formulas, one for finding out the magnitude of the resultant force, and the second one for finding out the direction of the resultant force with the help of parallelogram law of forces. So as I have told earlier, this method is used for finding the resultant of two forces at a time, two concurrent forces at a time. Clear? Now we have three different cases to be remembered. First one, let us assume that the angle between the two forces is 90 degree. So what will be the magnitude of the resultant force and direction of the resultant force if the angle between the two forces is 90 degree? You just need to substitute this value of theta in the formula for finding out the magnitude and direction of the resultant force. So you will be getting R as square root of F1 square plus F2 square, and alpha will be equal to tan inverse of F2 by F1. You just need to substitute the value of theta in the formula for finding out the resultant magnitude of the resultant force and the direction of the resultant force. That's all. Now let's take the second note. That is, we are assuming that the two forces are collinear. What do you mean by collinear forces? The line of action of the two forces will be same. Okay, that means the value of theta will be 0 if the forces are like collinear. Like means same direction. Again, substituting this value in the above formulas, we'll get R is equal to F1 plus F2 and alpha will be 0 degree. That means the resultant force will be having the same line of action of F1 and F2. Clear? Now one more case is there. That is, we are assuming that F1 and F2 are unlike collinear. Collinear means line of action will be same. So F1 and F2 will be having the same line of action. And unlike collinear means they will be having different directions. So F2 will be acting towards left and F1 will be acting towards right. So what will be the value of theta? Theta will be 180 degree. So that is not 3. Okay. So let us assume that F1 and F2 are unlike collinear forces. That means theta will be 180 degree, and let us assume that F1 is greater than F2. So in that case, we will get R as F1 minus F2 and alpha will be again equal to 0 degree. Now considering these three special cases or these three nodes, we can say that the resultant force will be maximum when the forces are like collinear. and the magnitude of the resultant force will be F1 plus F2. And the resultant force will be minimum when the forces are unlike collinear. That means the magnitude of the force capital R will be equal to F1 minus F2, and alpha will be again equal to 0 degree. So these are the three different cases, three important different cases to be remembered. So this is one method of finding out the resultant of two concurrent forces. Okay, now let's move on to the next method for finding out the resultant of two concurrent forces, that is triangle law of forces. First, let us see the definition of this one. If two forces F1 and F2 acting simultaneously on a particle can be represented by two sides of a triangle in magnitude and direction taken in order, then the third side or the closing side of the triangle represents the resultant force in the opposite order. That is triangle law of forces. Now in the figure, two forces are acting at point O. The angle between the two forces is given as theta. Now how will you find out the magnitude of the resultant force? The first thing is we need to represent these two forces by two sides of a triangle. Now here, by simply drawing the third side or the closing side, we cannot find out the magnitude. Okay, so here we need to mark the forces in order. That means you need to place the tail of the second force on the head of the first force. How will you do that? See here, this horizontal line shows the line of action of force F1. By principle of transmissibility of force, we can mark the force F1 anywhere on the line of action of the force. So instead of marking here, I have marked the force arrow mark here. Okay, so here this point, this denotes the head of the force F1 and this denotes the tail of the force F1. Now here you can see that the next force is starting from the head of this force. So here you can see a flow, right? So this is moving in the anti-clockwise direction. So that is taken in order. So if we can represent these two forces like this, then the third side or the closing side represents the resultant force in magnitude and direction in the opposite order. Here the forces are acting in the anti-clockwise direction. The resultant is acting in the clockwise direction. Okay, so this is triangle law of forces. Now, in order to derive the formula for finding out the magnitude of the resultant force as well as the direction of the resultant force, we will depend on the sine law and cosine law. Now, let the angle made by R with force F1 be alpha and angle made by the resultant force with F2 be beta. So, what will be this angle? This angle will be, the total angle is 180 degree. So, from there you can subtract this one to get this angle 180 minus theta. So, when you consider this triangle, you know all the values now, right? All the angles now. There is alpha, beta and 180 minus theta. Now, we have already learned the sine law and cosine law, right? So, if A, B, C are the sides of the triangle and alpha, beta and gamma are the angles, then A divided by sine alpha will be equal to B divided by this angle, sine beta, sine of this angle, which will be equal to C divided by sine of this angle, gamma. This is sine law, right? Now, what is cosine law? If you want to find out the side A, that can be found out using cosine law. There is A square will be equal to B square plus C square minus 2BC cos this angle, right? Cos alpha. Similarly, you can find out the side B also. So, B square will be equal to A square plus C square minus 2AC cos of this angle, cos beta. Similarly, C square will be A square plus B square minus 2AB cos gamma. So, using this sine law and cosine law, we can find out the magnitude and direction of the resultant force using triangle law of forces. So, you can apply the sine law here for finding out the direction of the resultant force. So, what will be that? Using the sine law, we can write R divided by sine of this angle, right? R divided by sine of 180 minus theta will be equal to F1. This force is F1. F1 divided by sine of beta which will be equal to this force F2 divided by sine of alpha. So using this sine law, you can find out the direction of resultant force with respect to F1 or with respect to F2. Now using the cosine law, we can find out the side of the triangle R. So how will you find out R? R square is equal to F1 square plus F2 square minus 2F1 F2 into cos of this angle, right? 180 minus theta. So from here, what is R? R will be equal to square root of F1 square minus 2F1 F2 cos 180 minus theta plus F2 square. So this is the formula used for finding out the magnitude of the resultant force, and using the sine law, you can find out the direction of the resultant force. So this is all about triangle law of forces. Now let's move on to the next topic, that is resolution and components of force. So we have already learned about the composition of forces. What is composition of force? Composition of force is the process of replacing a number of forces into a single force, right? That was composition of force. Now resolution means it is exactly the opposite of composition of forces. That means here we will be splitting a single force into a number of components. Okay, so that is a resolution of a force. So the process of replacing a single force F acting on a particle by two or more forces which together have the same effect as that of a single force is called a resolution of force into components. Now theoretically, we can resolve a single force into infinite number of components. But in practice, we will be resolving the force into two components. There is one along the x-axis or the other one along the y-axis. Or we can also resolve a force into two components along the plane and normal to the plane also. Now in this figure, we can see that a force capital F is resolved into two components. That is, one component will be along the x-axis and the other component will be along the y-axis. Okay, so here you can see that the force is acting away from this point. Okay, now the one component will be along the x-axis like this. That force will be acting towards right. Since the force is acting away from the point, the components also will act away from the point. So Fx will be acting towards right like this. Okay, now the other one is the force is acting away from the point. So the vertical component also will act away from the point. So Fy will be acting in the upward direction. So here we have resolved a single force, an inclined force, into two components. One along the x-axis, that is Fx, and the other one along the y-axis, that is Fy. Now from this triangle, what is cos theta? Cos theta will be adjacent side by hypotenuse, that is Fx by F, right? Or Fx will be equal to F into cos theta. Similarly, you can find out Fy also. That is, Fy will be F sin theta. So the component which is very near to this angle theta will be always cos. Okay, the component near to the angle marked will be always cos theta. So here Fx will be F cos theta and Fy will be F sin theta. Okay, now let us take another example. Here you can see that a block is resting on an inclined plane. Now the force or the weight will be acting vertically downwards, that we know, right? So here we are resolving this force into two components, one parallel to the plane, that is denoted by Ft, and the other one normal to the plane, which is denoted by Fn. Okay, So this angle is alpha. So this angle also will be alpha. Okay. So the component very near to the angle marked. That means this one, Fn. Fn is marked near to alpha, right? So that component will be cos. So Fn will be F cos alpha. Similarly, Ft will be F sin alpha. So this process of splitting a single force into two or more components is known as the resolution, and these forces are known as the components of the original force. Clear? Now let's see the principle of resolution. So the definition for principle of resolution is the algebraic sum of resolved parts of a number of forces in a given direction is equal to the resolved part of their resultant in the same direction. Okay, we will see the principle of resolution. What does that mean? Here, I have two forces. One is marked as P and the other one is marked as Q. I have completed the parallelogram OACB. Okay, I have marked the x-axis and y-axis. It starts from the point O. Now, I have two forces. By completing the parallelogram, I have found out the resultant force of P and Q, which is R. Clear? Okay. Now, what I am going to do is, I am going to consider x-axis as the reference. As I have told earlier, I can resolve the forces into two components, one along the x-axis and the other one along the y-axis. So here I am going to consider the x-axis as my reference axis. So here I am going to resolve all the forces along the x direction. Okay, so I have the force P, I have another force Q, and I have the resultant force capital R. I am going to resolve P along the x-axis, I am going to resolve Q along the x-axis, and I am going to resolve R along the x-axis. The component of P along the x-axis will be OL, right? From this triangle, OL denotes the component of force along the x-axis. Similarly, when you consider the force Q, this OM denotes the horizontal component of Q from this triangle OBM. Similarly, you can consider OCN. So in that triangle, ON denotes the component of R along the x-axis. So I have three components along the x-axis. The first component is that of P along the x-axis, that is OL. The second one is the component of Q along the x-axis, that is OM. And the third one is the component of R along the x-axis, that is ON. What is the principle of resolution? When you try to find out the algebraic sum of components of P along x-axis and the component of Q along x-axis, that will be equal to the component of R along the x-axis. That means ON will be equal to OL plus OM. Clear? That is principle of resolution. So here I am going to consider two triangles. One is triangle OBM and another one is triangle ACT. Now from these two triangles OBM and ACT, they are equal triangles, right? Why? Because OB and AC, they are parallel and equal. So this triangle will be same as this one. Or OM will be equal to AT, which will be equal to LN. Okay, so OB will be equal to OC and they are parallel. Also, OM will be equal to AT, which will be equal to LN. Now, from the geometry of figure, I can write ON is equal to OL plus LN, right? OL plus LN. Now, what is OL? OL is the resolved part of P along x-axis. Now, what is LN? Ln is equal to At, which is again equal to Om. Now what is Om? Om is the resolved part of Q along the x-axis. So when you add these two resolved parts, you will get On. What is On? On is the resolved part of resultant force along the x-axis. Now let's see the definition of principle of resolution. The algebraic sum of the resolved part of a number of forces. Here we have two forces. Resolved part of two forces P and Q in a given direction, that is along the x-axis or along the y-axis, is equal to the resolved part of their resultant in the same direction. So if you are considering the x-axis as the reference axis, the resolved part of resultant force along the x-axis will be equal to, that is On, will be equal to algebraic sum of resolved part of P along x-axis plus resolved part of Q along x-axis. That is principle of resolution. Clear? Okay. Now let's see how to find out the resultant of a number of forces acting on a plane with the help of principle of resolution. So there, first of all, let us assume that there are number of forces acting at a point. Okay, now we need to resolve all the forces into two components. One component along the x direction and the other component along the y direction. So if there are six inclined forces, we will resolve each force into two components. So in total, you will be having 6 into 2, that is 12 components of forces. There will be 6 components acting along the x direction and 6 forces acting, or 6 components acting along the y direction. Now you find out the algebraic sum of all the forces along the x direction. Okay, so similarly you can find out the algebraic sum of all the forces acting along the y direction. So that is marked as sigma h and sigma v. What is sigma h? You resolve all the forces into two components along the horizontal axis and along the vertical axis. Then you find the algebraic sum of all the horizontal forces. That will be marked as sigma h. Similarly, you find out the algebraic sum of all the vertical forces. That will be denoted by sigma v. Okay, so if you have sigma h and sigma v, you can find out the magnitude of the resultant force using the formula R is equal to square root of sigma v the whole square plus sigma h the whole square. This gives the magnitude of the resultant force. Similarly, you can find out the direction of the resultant force also using the formula tan theta is equal to sigma v by sigma h. So from this equation, you will be able to find out the value of theta. Now let us take an example. So here you can see that 5 different forces are starting from point O. So this is an example for concurrent force system. So we have 5 forces. One is F1, the second force is F2, F3, F4, and the last one is F5. Okay. Now I need to find out the resultant of this force system, or I want to replace all the forces by a single force which is known as the resultant of F1, F2, F3, F4 and F5. So how will you find out that? We can use the principle of resolution, or you can use the method of resolution for finding out the resultant force. For that, we have to resolve all the forces into two components, one along the horizontal direction and one along the vertical direction. So I will draw two axes, a horizontal axis and a vertical axis passing through the point O like this. This is the first axis and this one is the second axis. Now these two axes divide the plane into 4 quadrants, right? This one is first quadrant, this is the second quadrant, this one is third quadrant and this one is the fourth quadrant. So here you can see some forces are acting in the first quadrant, some are acting in the second quadrant, some are acting in the third quadrant. Also, some forces are acting along the x direction and along the y direction. Now let us take one by one. So I will mark the components of these forces here. Okay, so here also I have marked the x-axis and y-axis, and I am going to shift all the forces from this figure to this figure. The only difference is, instead of marking the inclined forces, I will be marking the components of each force in this figure. Okay, now let us take the first one, that is force F1. So that is actually a horizontal force, right? So for a horizontal force, the vertical component will be 0. If the force is acting in the horizontal direction, there will not be any perpendicular component or vertical component. So this force you can mark directly here. So F1 will be acting towards left. Now let us take the second force. This force is an inclined force which makes an angle of theta with the horizontal. Again, you can see that this force is lying in the first quadrant. So if the force lies in the first quadrant, you can resolve this force into two components. One will be along the positive x-axis, the other one will be along the positive y-axis. So one force will be acting along this line and the other component will be acting along the y direction. Then one more point is to be remembered. Here you can see that force F2 is acting away from the point O. So the components of this force also will act away from the point. So the horizontal component will be acting towards right and the vertical component will be acting in the upward direction. Okay, now what will be the horizontal component of F2? In this case, you can see the angle marked. So the component which is near to this theta will be always cos, right? So the horizontal component of F2 will be F2 cos theta, which will be acting towards right. See, F2 cos theta acting towards right. Now, what about the vertical component? So that will be F2. If this is F2 cos theta, this will be F2 sin theta. That will be acting in the upward direction. So F2 sin theta acting in the upward direction. So I have replaced this one by two components. I have split this force F2 into two components. F2 cos theta acting along the x-axis and F2 sin theta acting along the y-axis. Now let us take the third one. Here you can see that force F3 is acting in the upward direction. That is a vertical force. So there will not be any horizontal component. So if the force is a vertical force, then the horizontal component of that force will be 0. Earlier I have told that if the force is a horizontal one, there will not be any vertical component. Similarly, if the force is a vertical one, there will not be any horizontal component. So here you can mark the force F3 directly, that will be acting in the upward direction. Now let us take the next force F4, which is acting in the second quadrant, or which is lying in the second quadrant. So here the angle made by F4 with y-axis is given as alpha. Now I need to resolve this force also into two components, one along the x-axis and one along the y-axis. Now since this force F4 lies in the second quadrant, the components will be along the negative x-axis and along the positive y-axis. One will be here and one will be here. Okay. Now you can see that the force F4 is acting towards the point O, which means the components of force F4 will be acting towards the point O. So the horizontal component will be acting towards right and the vertical component will be acting in the downward direction. Okay. Now which component is near to the marked angle? That is this one, right? This vertical component. So vertical component will be cos, right? So the vertical component of F4 will be F4 cos alpha acting in the downward direction. F4 cos alpha acting in the downward direction. What about the horizontal component? That will be acting along the negative x-axis towards right, and that component will be sine. Okay, that is away from this angle, right? So F4 sine alpha, that will be acting towards right. Now let us take the last force, that is Fy, which lies in the third quadrant. Now, since the force lies in the third quadrant, components will be along this line and along this line. That is along the negative x-axis and along the negative y-axis. Now, the force is acting away from the point O. So, the components also will act away from the point. So, the force will be acting towards left, and here the component will be acting in the downward direction. Now, the angle is marked here. So, this component, the component which is touching this angle, this component will be cos, right? So, Fy cos beta, that will be acting towards left, and Fy sin beta will be acting in the downward direction. So, I have resolved all the forces into two components. Okay, now you can see there are no inclined forces acting on the system. There are only horizontal forces and vertical forces. Now, what is the next step? We need to find out the algebraic sum of all the horizontal forces. Similarly, we need to find out the algebraic sum of all the vertical components. So, we'll write down the equation sigma V and sigma H. Okay, first one is sigma V. So, here you can see some forces are acting in the upward direction and some are acting in the downward direction. Similarly, when you consider the horizontal axis, you can see some forces are acting towards right and some are acting towards left. So, we need to give sign also. So, if you consider the forces acting in the upward direction as positive, then we need to consider the forces acting in the downward direction as negative. Similarly, when you consider the horizontal components, if you are considering the forces acting towards left as negative, the forces acting towards right will be taken as positive or vice versa. So, we will consider the forces acting in the upward direction as positive and the forces acting in the downward direction will be taken as negative. Similarly, the forces acting towards right will be taken as positive and the forces acting towards left will be taken as negative. When you try to find out the algebraic sum of all the vertical components, see here F2 sin theta is acting in the upward direction, so that is positive. F2 sin theta. F3 is acting in the upward direction, so that is positive. F4 cos alpha is acting in the downward direction, so it is given as negative sign. And F5 sin beta, that is also acting in the downward direction, so that is also given a negative sign. So there are no other forces acting on the y axis. So sigma V will be F2 sin theta plus F3 minus F4 cos alpha minus F5 sin beta. Similarly, you can find out sigma H. What is sigma H? Algebraic sum of all the horizontal components, right? So here F1 is acting towards left, so I have given a negative sign. F2 cos theta is acting towards right, so it is given a positive sign. F4 sin alpha again acting towards right, so it is taken as positive. F5 cos beta is acting towards left, therefore it is given a negative sign. So sigma H will be minus F1 plus F2 cos theta plus F4 sin alpha minus F5 cos beta. Now we can find out the resultant force using the equation R is equal to sigma V square plus sigma H square. This will give the magnitude of the resultant force. Now in order to find out the direction, see here I have used the symbol phi for representing the direction of the resultant force since theta, alpha and beta are given in the question. Okay, so tan phi is equal to modulus of sigma V by sigma H. So when you calculate the sigma V, sometimes it will be negative or sometimes it will be positive. That depends on the magnitude of the forces F1, F2, F3, F4 and F5. Similarly, sigma H also can be negative or positive. So in order to calculate the direction of the resultant force, you need to consider only the positive sign. That is why I have given a modulus sign here. So sigma V by sigma H, from this equation you can find out the value of phi, which will be equal to tan inverse of sigma V by sigma H. So this will give the direction of the resultant force. Now I need to find out where the resultant force will lie, whether it is in the first quadrant or it is in the second quadrant or third quadrant or fourth quadrant. So how will you locate that? For that you need to consider the sign of sigma V and sigma H. Now if sigma V and sigma H both are positive, that is horizontal is positive, vertical is also positive, then the resultant will be lying in the first quadrant and the resultant R will make an angle of phi with the positive x-axis, right? Now if sigma H horizontal is negative and vertical is positive, that is sigma h is negative and sigma v is positive, then the resultant will be in the second quadrant. So there the angle made by the resultant forces will be with respect to the negative x-axis. Now, if sigma v and sigma h both are negative, resultant force will be in the third quadrant and the angle made by the resultant will be with respect to again minus x-axis. And if sigma h is positive and sigma v is negative, the resultant force will be in the fourth quadrant and phi will be the angle made by the resultant force with the positive x-axis. So here you can see that the angle is always measured with respect to the x-axis if you are using this formula. Phi is equal to tan inverse of modulus sigma v by sigma h. So this is a method for finding out the resultant force with the help of a resolution. Now let us take another example. We need to resolve the forces along the plane and perpendicular to the plane. So here you can see that an object is placed on an inclined surface. This angle is given, that is theta, and the weight of the object will be acting vertically downwards, and you are applying a force F which is parallel to the inclined plane. Now here I want to resolve the forces F and W along the plane and perpendicular to the plane. Now here you can see that the line of action of F and W meet at point O. So I will draw the two reference axes. First, the one will be parallel to the surface, since I need to resolve the force parallel to the surface, and the other one will be normal to the surface, since I need the other component perpendicular to the surface. So this is my reference x-axis and y-axis. Now you can see that this is our first quadrant, this is second quadrant, third quadrant and fourth quadrant. I will mark the quadrant like this: first, second, third and fourth. You can see that W is lying in the fourth quadrant, F is acting along the x-axis. So I am going to mark new x and y axis here. I will be transferring all the forces into this figure, but when we mark the forces here, I will be marking only the components along the x and y direction. Now here you can see F is acting along the x-axis, so you can mark that directly. There is no other perpendicular component since that is acting along the x-axis. There will not be any component along the y-axis, as I have told earlier. Now we will take the second force, that is weight of the block. So the weight of the block is acting vertically downwards and it lies in the fourth quadrant. So we need to resolve this force into two components. Since the weight lies in the fourth quadrant, the component of weight will be acting along the positive x-axis and along the negative y-axis. Now we know that this angle is theta, so the angle made by the weight with respect to the y-axis also will be theta. How will you get that angle? You first consider this right angle triangle, So here if this angle is theta and this one is 90 degree, this angle will be 90 minus theta. Then you consider this right angle triangle. So here you can see that this angle is 90 minus theta. So this will be 90 and the remaining angle will be theta. So if this angle is theta, the angle made by the W with respect to y-axis also will be equal to theta. Now when you resolve this weight into two components, you will get W sin theta along the x-axis acting towards right and W cos theta acting along the negative y-axis in the downward direction. So W cos theta acting in the downward direction and W sin theta acting towards right. Now we have resolved the forces. Once the forces are resolved, we know how to find the magnitude of the resultant force as well as the direction of the resultant force. That can be done with the help of principle of resolution. Now the next topic is equilibrium of a particle. A body is said to be in equilibrium when the resultant of the force system acting on it is 0. If a body is in equilibrium, it will continue to remain in a state of rest or of uniform motion. So a body is said to be in equilibrium if the resultant force acting on the system is equal to 0. That means R will be equal to 0. Now, what is the formula for finding out the resultant? That is R is equal to square root of sigma V square plus sigma H square. Now, if this R is equal to 0, then sigma V will be equal to 0 and sigma H also will be equal to 0. Okay, so these are the two equilibrium equations. So if you want a body to be in equilibrium, the resultant force acting on that body must be equal to 0, or in other words, the algebraic sum of all the vertical forces acting on the body will be 0, and algebraic sum of all the horizontal forces acting on the body also will be equal to 0. Now the next one is equilibrant. What is equilibrant? Equilibrant of a system of force is a single force which acts along with the other forces to keep the body in equilibrium. In the first figure, you can see that there are 4 forces acting at a point. Now, you know how to replace all these forces by a single force which is known as the resultant force. So, that resultant force, let us assume that it is acting in the first quadrant, and that makes an angle of alpha. Now, according to Newton's second law of motion, we know that if the force is acting on a body, it tends to move in the direction of that force with some acceleration. So, the particle has a tendency to move in the direction of this resultant force. Now, if you want to bring that body to rest, then you need to apply another force in a direction opposite to the direction of resultant, like this. Okay, so if you are applying another force whose magnitude is same as the magnitude of the resultant force but acting in the opposite direction, then the system will come to rest. Then this force, which is denoted by capital E, is known as the equilibrant of a system of forces. Now the last topic is Lami's theorem. What is Lami's theorem? If there are 3 forces acting at a point, and if the system is in equilibrium, then each force will be proportional to sine of the angle between the other 2 forces. See here in the figure, you can see there are 3 forces P, Q and R. And let us assume that the particle is in equilibrium. So if the system is in equilibrium, we know that the resultant force acting on that system will be equal to 0. Now, if there are 3 forces and if the system is in equilibrium, then we can apply the Lami's theorem. One more point is there. Either all the forces must act away from the point or it must act towards the point. If all these conditions are satisfied, then we can apply the Lami's theorem. So what are the conditions? The first condition is there should not be more than 3 forces. There must be minimum 3 forces acting on a particle. All the forces must be acting away from the particle or towards the particle, and the system must be in equilibrium. If these 3 conditions are satisfied, you can apply the Lami's theorem. Now what is Lami's theorem? Each force will be directly proportional to sine of the angle between the other 2 forces. That means this P will be directly proportional to sine of angle between R and Q, that is beta. So P will be directly proportional to sine beta. Or similarly, Q will be directly proportional to sine gamma, or R will be directly proportional to sine of the angle between P and Q, that is alpha. Or in other words, we can say that P by sine beta will be equal to Q by sine gamma, which will be equal to R by sine alpha.